I'm Jeff Schulman, a marketing professor, and this is the first ever Foster the Product event, and we are figuring some things out, but I'm really grateful that all of you are here, and I'm really grateful for our guest speaker who is going to talk about what to expect in different phases of product management. Foster the Product is going to be the first Thursday of every month, and it's a chance for some of the best product leaders to share some of the insights that they've learned and to share them with you. And more than just sharing knowledge that could help and be applied in product management, Foster the Product is a community. It's a chance to come together to learn and to connect with ideas and people that can help you grow and help you advance in a product-focused career. And today we're going to have one of our founding advisory board members, somebody who helped launch this series from Microsoft, is going to be here to talk about what to expect in different phases of product management. Today is possible because of the hard work of our TM MBA program, our hybrid MBA program, and our specialty master's programs. Jack and Susie have helped organize this event, and this event is possible because of the founding advisory board members such as Kavita, who has generously given her time. I also want to acknowledge Pooja Tripathi, who helped line up a future guest speaker, and Iman Barhome, who's going to be a speaker later in the series as well. But there's been a big collective effort to try to make Foster the Product a place where you could connect with people and ideas that can help you grow and advance your career in product. One of our students, Megan Brown, in the TM MBA program, has a bright future in product, and she's going to introduce our guest speaker today.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I'm very happy to introduce Kavita Kamani. She is a Principal Director of Program Management on the Supply Chain Engineering team at Microsoft. The Supply Chain Engineering team powers Microsoft's cloud and device supply chains, which bring hardware, devices, and cloud services to Microsoft's consumer and commercial customers. Kavita started as a developer and moved into a PM role while pursuing her MBA at the University of Washington. As a PM, she started on developer products like .NET Developer Platform, and then focused on communication, collaboration, and productivity solutions for information workers. A few of the products where she's left a mark are Lync or Skype for Business, Microsoft Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint. She loves being able to influence and define product strategy and obsesses about customer needs. Kavita is an advisor to the product management course at Foster. She's also passionate about growing the representation of women in technology and helped kickstart the Women in Product Seattle chapter. On the personal front, Kavita is married and mother of 2 young, energetic kids, and she loves sports, is an avid runner, biker, skier, hiker, and mountaineer. Thank you for joining us today. I'll hand it off to you, Kavita.
Thanks, Megan, and thanks, Jeff. Thanks for the warm welcome. I'm super honored to kick off the Foster the Product series. I remember the day we came up with the name using a brainstorming set of techniques. And I've always been impressed. I've known Jeff for a couple of years, and I have to say I'm impressed with the thoughtfulness that he brings to make his coursework relevant for his students. So super honored to kick off the series for you guys. As Megan talked about, I started out my career as a software engineer, and then I moved to the PM role partway through my MBA program when I was at Foster. I'm a TM MBA alum. I graduated in 2007 from the Technology Management MBA program. And I've been fortunate to work as a PM on many well-known products, products for developers, products that you and me use, products that my kids use today to join their school meetings, actually. And over the years, obviously, you know, in a company like Microsoft, you are a cog in the wheel, and these products were a partnership across many people and many functions. PMs, obviously other PMs, user researchers, UX designers, developers, data analysts. And I'm just so honored that these products have reached to millions and millions of users. And over the years, as a PM, I've been exposed to a lot of challenges, a lot of different situations, a lot of products that were successful, products that didn't ship, some products that thrived, right? And it's just each of them has been a source of learning for me. So I'm really hoping that today I can share just some of the lessons for you as a PM. You know, what do you need to do in different phases of product management so you are better prepared, you are more effective, and you're more proactive about what you could be doing. To start off, I just wanted to say, as a PM, you're the CEO. The buck stops with you. You are driving clarity, you are creating energy, and you're pushing things along, right? I came up, when I was talking to Jeff about this topic, I came up with the 5Ds just as an acronym to remember, what are the different phases in product management. And for me, it really starts with the idea of a product that a customer will use or will interact with. And it ends with the evaluation of the product's success. So when you start off, you're just exploring ideas. You really don't know if there is value, if there is a real need, if this is a real problem. You're just being creative, you're thinking through these things and you're exploring, right? Then you start to rationalize. You want to make sure before you spin off a bunch of developers and other people working on this thing, you want to ensure there is a real problem here and there is a real business case here with a proper ROI and return on investment, right? So you want to make sure that, what are the assumptions you're making, do some user research, you want to do some analysis and convince yourself that this is something worth going forward with. And then you design, you think about, hey, how am I going to solve this problem? In what order will I approach things? In what are my hypotheses or assumptions that I'm making? And how can I quickly validate these as I go along? And this is where you do a bulk of the work with other engineers, with UX folks, and you build essentially the execution plan for your team, right? Then you build the product. This is mostly your developers doing the work, but they're building to your specs. So you're collaborating very heavily, making sure that they have clarity on what they need to do, right? And you're bringing in new insights as you learn, right? And finally, you get your users to use the product. And this is where the rubber hits the road. And you might have to train them. You want to monitor usage. You understand their feedback. You listen, you measure, and you keep fine tuning the thing, right? So these are the 5 Ds and 5 phases of product management for me. So let's take an example. There was a product that I worked on and we called it the M box or the meetings box. And this is back in 2014 is when I worked on this product. So about 6 years ago. And the idea was that we wanted to convert any conference room which had a HD monitor into a video conferencing room, right? The idea was, look, there is a unified communications conference in 8 months. We want to go announce something there. Google had come up with a competitive product called Chromebox for meetings, and we wanted to have a solution for Skype for Business for this lower end price point for converting any kind of small conference room into a video conferencing room. And given the timeline, given we had about 8 months from the time we started talking about it to the time we wanted to go release this, there was no time to go fabricate new hardware and stuff like that for this. So we decided to go with off-the-shelf products and decided that we would focus on building a very coherent experience around it. So what the product we came up with was essentially the piece of hardware that we would sell is this Intel NUC, which was our PC on which the meeting software would run. The microphone puck and a webcam, right? So you have a conference room where you have an HD monitor and you have an HD cable and a power outlet. You can go plug these things in and off you go. Our prerequisite was that you would have Office 365 or Skype for Business account. And that's the account that you would use for joining your meetings. And the idea was, look, as a departmental user in a big company or let's say a small business, you could go, any employee could go buy this from say a Best Buy. You got this package and you came in and you opened the package and plugged it in. And then very quickly, without involving any IT administrator or any kind of management interface, you would be able to plug this in and just go and join your meetings. And it would walk you through, as you plug in, it would walk you through a simple setup and pairing experience on a mobile app. And the app will walk you through, as you sign into your Office 365 account, it would show you all your meetings. And then you could click from the app to join the meeting. It brings in this device into the meeting as an attendee. And in your conference room, now you have this fully immersive video experience on your HD monitor. So the idea was great. And we had, by the way, we had a lot of fun building it. We did announce it at the conference. The product did not end up shipping. And so I picked this example because we did some things right and we did some things wrong. And even though we didn't ship, it was the right call at the time. And so I wanted to walk through the model that I just talked about, the 5Ds for this particular product, and share with you, hey, what did I learn through this experience? Right? So when we were in the discover phase, we were talking about, hey, look, Chromebox for meetings is doing well. We had a set of video conferencing solutions for meeting rooms, but they were pretty expensive. We were partnering with partners like Polycom, et cetera, and they were in excess of $2,000 plus, all the way to $10,000, $20,000 products. So we wanted a low price point solution for Skype for Business for smaller rooms. We also had heard that, look, all those other products needed an IT administrator to come in and configure these devices and manage them. And our departmental users, or the small businesses that were on Office 365, they neither found this viable from a price point standpoint, nor did they have these IT administrators that they could go, configure complex things. So we thought the idea had legs, and we did some research and we got a lot of interest in this, right? So we went ahead with it. And then as we progressed through the development, and we did dog fooding, like we tested this out, we piloted this both within the company as well as outside the company with other customers. What we realized is, it was meeting a need, but the IT administrators were not happy that there were all these devices coming in, and then these needed to be updated, managed, and things like that. And so they actually said, look, we don't want this kind of BYOD, bring your own device type thing for the conference room. We actually want a management solution. So that's something we struggled with as the product evolved, as to what really was our target customer and what are we going to do about this, right? Then the next is when we were starting to flush this product out, and we were, what we had decided, given the timeline of 8 months from the time we started to the time we needed to launch, we were not going to build our hardware, and we had a very specific price point target. And we had the timeline target, right? So we couldn't do the fabricating, the packaging, and the whole channel with which we would sell this on our own. So we decided to partner with Polycom in this particular case. But as we did this, the overall Microsoft strategy was changing for devices. And the Microsoft devices business became a big thing. And, Surface came about, and it was going to be about the same price point. And it already had Windows on it. It already had a meeting software, the Skype for Business client on it. And the question then was, do we want to go create yet another thing, or should we go build with this? So as a PM, right, you cannot just be focused on what you're doing. It lives in an ecosystem, especially when you're working in a bigger company, and there's other things that play into that strategy as well that you need to account for. Next. And when we were designing this, this was my most fun part of the project, I thought. And we worked really closely with UX designers, and we did a lot of testing internally. We actually, to the extent, we even went to our cafeterias and posted posters on how to go ping us to get one of these test devices and use it for their small focus rooms, or if they were working from home, if we could give folks an MBox to go test out. And the whole ask was, hey, you would give us a lot of feedback and you would join every meeting from this. And then, we really iterated as we went through, and iterated on the UX. And the setup was a breeze. You'd basically have, once you plug in, the monitor would show you where to go download the app, and then how to go pair. There was a pairing code that we said, you would go put in, and then that would pair with the device, and then you could go join your meetings. But one of the things, and we heard a lot of good feedback, people loved the immersive video experience, because remember back in like 2014, not many people wanted to have a lot of video meetings. And I think now it's becoming more and more common because that is how we interact with people. But this really, it made video so delightful that people wanted to go turn on video. And I thought, it was generally, we were hearing some very good feedback. But here is the catch. We had consumed the cable essentially. So what we had done is that cable was plugged into the Nook or the PC that we had. And for the use case where a user just walks in with a colleague into a conference room and they want to project content on the monitor, now we had made that hard because the cable was no longer available. If you didn't have wireless projection in that room, then basically just when you have an in-person meeting and you just want to share content on a big monitor, we had made that hard. And what we had said is, look, what you can do is you can pair with the device, create an ad hoc meeting and share content into it. But we had made that harder, right? So that was a learning, and that was something we were struggling with on how to go simplify. There were also a lot of other things we ran into around security versus usability. For the pairing tech, Bluetooth was still a little flaky. So we're like, oh, should we do Bluetooth pairing? Should we do NFC? Should we do this code-based thing? And then how should I think about how long is that pairing valid? Or should I regenerate the code? The physical security of the device itself, were we going to include some kind of locking thing so that the device could be secured in the room? And the device was essentially joining on behalf of the user as an attendee. So it had to be auto-admitted into the meeting, kind of like how you guys had to be, admitted from the waiting room or the lobby into the meeting. So, how do we think through the user experience, taking into account all of these things and keep it seamless? So I would say, we did really well here because we kept unveiling new issues and we kept working through things as we went along. Then, when we were in the do phase, for example, one of the challenges we ran into was, the screen shows you, we had so many different Skype for Business clients already, right? We had one that ran on the big screens. We had a Skype for Business mobile app. We had the desktop app. And now yet another client code base we were introducing, which was heavily optimized for full screen kind of immersive video. And the question was, look, and as a user who's a Skype for Business user, do they have just the Mbox app, or should they also have the Skype for Business app? And I think just the ecosystem of the number of things that we had and the confusion from it, or even having to maintain and support this thing, that was a big challenge that we were thinking through. Hey, how do we, should we make this a standalone app? Should we make it as part of one of those apps? How does discoverability work? How does ease of use work, and the trade-offs? And those are some things that we worked through. And then finally, as we were, like I talked about, when we were driving, Jeff, can you go to the next slide? Yeah. When we were driving the usage, the team, I thought, worked really well together. And even though, like, you might think, look, in a big company like Microsoft, we operated like a startup. And we met every day. We had kind of daily scrums. We would get so much feedback. We had such passionate users, both kind of within the company and some of the external TAP users that we had signed up to use this thing. The key thing as a PM was understanding what feedback and I'm going to action, and managing the backlog and the priority of what things we could go address, because we really some things were conflicting and we really could not address all of the feedback, and we had to be really centered about, hey, what's the core usage of the product, right? So but we watched people like a fly in the wall. We would say, hey, can we just come in and listen to you, be in the corner of the room and watch you join the meeting. And we would just observe. We would just like soak things up. And as a PM, you really want to obsess about how your product is being used. What are you learning about adoption? What are you learning about challenges that people are running into, right? So, with all that said, I would say, if I think through all of these 5 Ds, what is consistent for me is, Jeff, could you go to the next slide? is, no matter what phase you are in as a PM, you have to be proactive. You have to keep your eyes and ears open. But the core thing is, look, you have to own it. You have to be the CEO. You will lose sleep. That's when you really are super connected to this product. And that doesn't mean you're doing everything on your own. You can't, right? But you think through everything. You connect the things together. You pull together the story, and you figure out who's doing what and whether the collective of all these things is making sense or not, right? The second thing I'll say is test early, test often. Any hypothesis, whether it's hey, who's the customer segment for this? What is should I build the feature this way or that way? Is this feature more important or this other feature more important? Whatever it is, whether it's your idea or concept or your prototype or your UX or your hypothesis, test it. You are creating the backlog for your team and they are following your lead, right? So the sooner you make sure that it's going to drive the results you were hopeful about, the better it is for everyone. So test early, test often. And then the last thing I'll say is, adapt and be willing to pivot. When you are this attached to a product, sometimes you start taking things personally, right? But the thing is, you're not the user. You have to listen for signals. You have to watch for these signals, and things might change. You might learn something that you hadn't seen, you hadn't thought through, or when you see users use your product, you might realize, look, this isn't how I anticipated this to be used. So what you need to do is listen, adapt, and be open to pivoting if needed. Just don't be stuck, right? I think those three things would be, I would say, my takeaway for you, no matter what phase of product management you're in. And so, yeah, I think that's what I want to leave you with.
Thank you very much. Very much appreciate it. So our first question is, would you be able to share any insights on the difference between the skills required to be a hardware PM versus a software PM?
So, I think there's two pieces of being a PM. One is the domain, and the other is kind of these meta skills, the methodology, the mindset that you're in. And I think the mindset is the same no matter whether you're a hardware PM or a software PM. Are you really spending the time in trying to understand the problem and spending technically a lot more time before you jump into solutions? Because unless you really understand the problem, you're most likely building something that will not solve the issue at all, right? And you don't want to be surprised later. So the mindset, I think, is the same no matter whether you're a hardware PM or a software PM. And I think, of course, the domain, like if I'm working in, for example, I'm a PM building hardware, I need to have some experience and domain skills on doing that, versus if I'm a PM who's building a lot of UX and user experiences, versus a PM who is building admin features or backend features, or building like a platform that developers use. So that's how I would answer that question.
All right, so our next question, and I want to tell everybody, we've created a Foster the Product LinkedIn group. So if you head over to LinkedIn, if your question doesn't get answered, you head over to LinkedIn, Foster the Product, and you could raise the question and either our guest speaker can answer it, or maybe the community can answer questions there as well. One question is, what was the process like in convincing some of the stakeholders that you wanted to develop this product? And how would one go about advocating for an idea if you were pretty new at Microsoft?
How would I convince my stakeholders? I think you have to really understand. To me, the stakeholder is a customer of yours too, and the product is really your pitch for them. So apply the same things to that, right? Think about what is it that they care about. You have to really understand at the core of it, what is it that drives their success, or what is the metric that they are after, and then how what you're doing helps them achieve their goal, right? So and think through that, like, so that's how typically, and in this particular case, yeah, there was a lot of this. one of our VPs kind of came up with this, but there was an agreement across the board, especially as the devices group was kind of bringing in their the first party devices and was like, okay, what should we do? So we had all of these kind of controversial meetings where we had to go present a point of view and be open to that debate, right? And really not only think through, and as a PM, you want to obviously be the core champion for your product, but don't be so isolated. You need to understand what is the overall ecosystem you're playing in and how that can make your product or solution more stronger.
And so these questions are pretty related, but one is kind of about this pivot that you took. In retrospect, do you think that was a good idea? And as you're thinking about such pivots, how do you balance using qualitative data versus quantitative data versus gut instinct? So was it a good idea to pivot, and how do you think about when to pivot in the future?
I think, was it a good idea to pivot? Well, I think the product would have had limited success if we had stayed with the original plan. And it would also have created a very bifurcated kind of overall story for Microsoft. Like when customers, especially in the case of Microsoft, when they come to us, I mean, there's already too many offerings for the same thing. Like I'll give you an example of, hey, should I use Teams? Should I use Yammer? Should I use this? Should I use, and people are confused. So when you just create something in isolation to solve one piece of the problem and you're not thinking through how it fits in the broader ecosystem, you create confusion for your users. So I think it was important for us, given we were Microsoft and given we had an overall strategy, for us to pivot here and not go with the original thing, because we were hearing very loud and clear that the IT team in enterprises, which is the biggest users of Office 365, they wanted some kind of management solution for this. And so this whole, like, I can go off the shelf, buy this and plug this in, wasn't something that they, then they would need policies to block this, essentially, right? So we had to think through that.
And so this next question is about defining success and kind of putting the metrics down to paper. At what stage in your framework do you define success, and what information do you use to do that?
Early. So, not the first phase, not the discover phase, but when you're defining, that's when you need to understand and be very convicted. You understand that what problem you're trying to solve. You could solve like a million problems. Why is this the most important problem for you to go solve? And part of the why is it the most important is, hey, what is the opportunity, right? And when you define the opportunity, there's the how will you know you've gotten there, right? So what's the lag measure at the end of it that will tell you that you've achieved the outcome you were after. And then of course you want to also go think through, define some leading measures. How will you know along the way? You don't want to find out a year later that you met the lag measure. That's too late. And the analogy I give, a simple analogy of the lag versus lead measures is, look, if I say, look, I want to lose 20 pounds, that's a lag measure and 20 pounds in 6 months. So I'm being specific about how much I want to lose and in what time frame. But if I wait for 6 months and then measure, it's too late. By then, I don't know, my success rate is 50%. So what are some lead measures that will tell me that my chances of meeting my lag measure is high? I can start to see, hey, how many steps am I taking? How many calories am I eating? I can see those on a weekly basis, as I go. So I can see, hey, am I on track or not? So you as a PM, you want to go define, not only your outcome in terms of lag measures at the end, but also what are some lead measures that will tell you whether you're on the right track.
So the last question before we head to breakout groups is about managing the engineers. So how do you build trust and relationships with the engineers? And this is maybe not with your example, but recently, how does that change with COVID?
So, as a PM, super important that, you work really well with your engineers. And I think, trust to me, it comes because of a few things. One is people think you are a reasonable person and that you have You have the skills for the job, and you're easy to work with, right? Look, all those that they, you're not stuck. You're open to collaboration. You have, what you have the skills to go do the job, and then so I think you need to make sure that you spend a lot of time with your developers to get to know them on a personal basis, because you spend a lot of time as PMs with them, right? So go for a coffee, and in this case, go for a virtual coffee, in today's world. But that relationship, fostering that relationship, I think is super, super important. And, another piece of trust is, you say what you're going to do, and then you do it, and you build trust over time. So it's like they feel they can trust you. They feel they can collaborate with you. They feel they can communicate with you. So I think it just takes time, but at the core of it, it's just, trust between two people.